Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker, and joining me today is a very special guest. He's the director of No Doubt Management and Hotbox Gym owner, Colin Nathan. Colin, appreciate you taking time to come on today.
Yeah, Zach, it's just great to be on your platform, and thanks for inviting me. It's just great to be talking. Obviously, we're going to be talking about boxing, not the Wimbledon. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Well, there's a few things I want to get into, but the very first thing is that, and now correct me if I pronounce this incorrectly, but Nova Kanjani, it means no matter what in Zulu. I got to hear the backstory behind that. Why is that the name you've kind of gone with now?
Yeah, so my first real job when I finished school was to be on television. I was a television continuity presenter.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of my passion and love for boxing, I got into boxing analysis and then obviously commentary. And I was in studio the one night, and then, just obviously being my television career, being around Zulu guys, I learned one or two pieces of slang and words and so forth. So
Okay.
I learned what Nomaganjani means. And I was asked a prediction. Someone asked me my prediction. And in the studio, I said, he's going to win on a first round knockout in Nomaganjani. And the host of the show at the time was saying, Colin Nathan just gave me his prediction, and he said Nomaganjani in Zulu. And then every Friday in studio would be, and in studio with me is Colin Nomaganjani Nathan. And kind
Okay.
of that became my boxing nickname. It means no matter what. And that's why, and no matter what, no doubt. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I started my company 7 years ago called No Doubt Promotions. Sorry, I do have a company called No Doubt Promotions, but also No Doubt Management. And
Okay.
I thought I was going to call it Nomaganjani Management, but then I thought internationally it's not going to resonate. So then the English version of that is No Doubt. So that's where it came from.
All right, I love that. So there's a few things I want to get into today with you and to discuss about, but one of which is the most recent news, the biggest news, and I know a lot of people are interested in hearing about that. And that is the big fight. You're going to be coming out to America in July with Pumile Kafu, unification with Bam Rodriguez. You got to walk us through this though, because this is a massive, massive fight. One of the biggest unification fights we can get right now. Obviously, Bam's a pound for pound, top five, in my opinion, type of guy. You just talk about how this all came together. Just give us the backstory, how this deal come together.
Yeah, well, it's just been 6 weeks of my life, and I kind of figured to myself that you reached out to me at a great time.
Yeah.
And in fact, you and I were supposed to be scheduled to connect. I actually thought it was last week. So the
Okay.
fact that you said it was this week kind of coincided with the announcement. So
Mhm.
look, we beat Tanaka in a massive upset in Tokyo on the 14th of October last year, in a fight that we really weren't supposed to win, and we ended up pulling it off. And I knew I had the right racehorse to win the race.
Hmm.
And then we were going to get ready for homecoming on here in South Africa in Johannesburg on the 24th of May. And then we got the call, and then the call was like, well, do you want the unification?
Mhm.
And we were like, hell yes, just like send the contract.
Yeah.
Because Pumelela has never really called anyone out. And the
Mhm.
only person he's ever called out was Jesse. And
Mhm.
when we got back to the dressing room after beating Tanaka, he looked at me and he said, Pups, can you get me Rodriguez? And I was like, really? Straight away? He was like, yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
then obviously we were getting ready for the homecoming, yeah, in Johannesburg. And then this all came into the mix. There was a lot of back and forth um, with Matchroom and myself. And then, a couple of weeks ago, we finally got it over the line, which obviously we couldn't announce until everything was in place, you could say.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so we're very excited about it. We know that not many people are giving us a chance. It's great. I've been
Mhm.
in this situation many times before. And I think, yeah, I like our chances going into this.
Really? So that's what I want to ask you about, because when we talk about this, this is going to be a huge fight. Obviously, you said Pumila is going to be the underdog heading into the fight, but he was the very same story was him going out there to Japan and fighting Tanaka as well. Now, maybe this is going to be a little bit deep, a little bit larger odds from him overall in that aspect, but still, he's been the underdog and he's overperformed time and time before. Can you take us through just your guys' approach? Obviously, you guys are going to put it in store, game plan, work towards that, but you just said you feel confident about this. Why do you feel so confident? Colin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. No, not for a while.
Okay, here, let me see what's going on. Can you hear me now? Welcome back, everyone, to the SchuZ Show. Apologies for the technical difficulties there. But with that being said, Colin, as we're getting into now, when you talk about the situation that Cafu is going to be getting into, this is not a once in a situation in a lifetime he's been in before. We just talked about when he went out to Japan, bought Tanaka. He was also the underdog in that situation. Can you walk us through, because you said you were confident in this upcoming fight? Why do you feel so confident in Cafu?
Well, I think the odds are going to be wider going into the Rodriguez fights. I mean, no one's going to give us a hope in hell.
Yeah.
And I just think, all things being equal, I think Kafu, even in South Africa, he's highly underrated. Like, a lot of
Hmm.
people are very dismissive of his ability. And I think he's grown from that experience in Japan. He's never had to fight at that pace. And now he knows. And we've just seen a total shift in him mentally and physically, even in training. When we were getting ready for this homecoming, I mean, he was like beast. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Mm.
And that's not to say that he was a lazy trainer or he didn't train hard, because he did. But he knows the level now that he has to be at, and he knows the level that he has to train at, and he's
Okay.
prepared, and he's preparing very, very hard for this.
So you'd say it's more so of a flip that's kind of a switch where he recognized that this is a chance to really change my life forever, and I know that this is the level I can rise to now.
Yeah, and I think he knew that going in when he fought
Okay,
Tanaka. I think this is obviously another level as well. It's a different level, and
sure.
we understand that. He knows that. He's a very realistic kid. He knows the situation in terms of, if you want to be great, you got to take great steps. You got to take great risks, and this is a massive, massive step for us to be great.
Now, in terms of the contract, is there going to be rematch clauses? Is this something where if Kafu pulls off the upset, we could see this happen again, or is this not in the contract?
You saying if Kafu pulls off the upset?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
No, you mean when?
If so, when Kafu, oh, all right, I like that. So when that occurs, then is there going to be a rematch clause then?
No, there are obviously fight options, but there's no rematch clause as per se.
Okay.
But I mean, it's obviously something would need to discuss when we pull it off.
Gotcha, absolutely. Well, I want to get into your guys' relationship because when he came over to you, obviously his main goal, I read an article, was about, hey, I want to become world champion. That's already been accomplished now. But when you guys first got to know each other, how did this relationship first start, and how did you guys get to know each other?
Yeah, I mean, we saw each other at a boxing event, and we were kind of friends on social media, and then I was still involved with Sivanati Nonchinga, former world champion, two-time world champion, and they were friends, and we were overseas, and he video called Sivanati, and I was like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And we kind of just maintained a relationship. We started, you know what it's like. We started adding each other on socials and
Sure.
started speaking. And then he basically said to me, "Look, I need some help. How far do you think I can go?" And I said, "Man, I can get you a world title shot, and I believe you can become world champion." And the rest is kind of history, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that's and I like to think that I have a special bond with all my fighters. Obviously, there's got to be
Hmm.
that connection with trainer fighter.
Agree.
Um, and he's just a lovely human being. I enjoy being around him. I enjoy being in his company. He's got a great boxing IQ.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, like, I love South African boxing. I mean, it's no secret. Guys know that I absolutely am in love with my country. So
Hmm.
I love the vibe and the boxing culture here in the country.
I love that you brought that up because that's something I really want to dive into. Because as somebody in America looking at South African boxing and becoming more and more aware of it, I feel like it's in a really, really good place right now. When you talk about obviously what you've built over there at No Doubt Management, what you've been doing, but just overall from the top to bottom of the country, there's a lot of great things. Just the Kevin Lorena, Jelani, and Benge card was obviously really good last weekend or last week on Thursday. And you just talk about the state of South African boxing. How good of a place do you feel like it's at right now?
Well, I think in terms of talent, we've got ability to compete for credible, legitimate world titles and obviously cross the line. We've seen that now. I think administratively, it's getting better. We're going through great political change here in South Africa
Hmm.
with the GNU, which stands for the Government of National Unity.
Okay.
And obviously, we saw the transformation in 1994 with the new South Africa. And now we're going through some great political times and changes as well. And I believe for the better. But going back to your question with regards to the shift and the change, boxing in terms of talent always goes through dips and ebbs and flows. It's pendulum always swings, as they say.
Yeah.
And I think now we've got some really bright talent coming through, some young kids that I truly think are going to be kind of the flag bearers of South African boxing going forward.
Okay.
But in terms of actually having the ability, we have the talent and the ability to compete and be successful at world class level.
When you talk about those young guys, the up and coming guys, maybe not even the guys that's world champions right now, because I know obviously Simonachi is obviously young, Pumlela is young, but you're talking about that next generation after these guys have yet to become world champions. Who do you have your eyes on? Who are some guys that people should get to know a little bit better because you believe that they will become world champions in the future?
Yeah. There's a few coming up. There's one kid in Cape Town, the Western Cape, called Aseko Prince Notele, who is 8-0, 6 knockouts, very good looking, 21 years old, hits
Okay.
really, really hard. There's young featherweight called Ishmael Kadri. He's also with us. He's 9-0. He's scheduled to be fighting on the 24th of May. There's a whole group of young fighters. There's a super welterweight who's 6-0 called Joshua Feldman, who's my baby. Actually, he's 20 years old. I met him when he was 17. He's
Okay.
going through the ranks and he's really, really shining every time he steps in the ring, getting better and better. There's a whole group of young kids. And for me to kind of just say you got to keep your eye on one fighter would be a little unfair to the rest. But I
Mm-hmm.
would tell the viewers and the listeners who are tuning into this that keep your eye on South African boxing because
Agree.
we really do have the talent. And I feel that a lot of people globally undermine Africa as a whole in terms of
I
boxing.
agree.
And we've
Mm-hmm.
had some really, really talented fighters coming through in the last few years.
If you were to say, whether that be politically, that be as a country, that be infrastructure wise, whatever it is, if you could pick one thing or maybe even a couple of things that you think needs to be the next steps for South African boxing to maybe implement to make this a bigger, large scale thing, what do you think is the improvements that need to happen in South Africa?
I think governance. You
Okay.
know, we as a sport in this country are governed by the act, which is parliament, which is government, which a
Okay.
lot of other boxing commissions around the world are not governed by the act.
Mm,
And I think good governance will see the sport flourish, and it starts at the grassroots level.
mm-hmm.
I think government needs to do more for the amateur code with Sonabo, who's obviously reports to SASCOC, which is the South African Olympic Committee.
Okay.
But having said that, I think you know why I think South Africa hasn't really prospered as a country, particularly in the last few years, is because of governance. And someone actually asked me last year, do I think boxing in this country should be privatized? And I said, no. We've got rules and regulations that need to be applied to and for everyone. And just get the right leaders in and we can thrive. And I think we're starting to see that now for boxing South Africa and in South African boxing.
I think, like you said, boxing is really underrated overall in terms of the global aspect, looking in at African boxing and even South Africa. What do you think it will take for people to become more aware? 'Cause like I said, I've become a big fan of it. I love watching you guys, what you guys have been putting out there, seeing the way that different fighters have come out now, obviously like Sivanachi, like Pumale, like Kevin Lorena, etc. But what do you think it's going to take for you guys to kind of break that threshold where all of a sudden, worldwide, you guys will have more respect?
I think it happens on the 19th of July
Okay. I like that.
when Pumalila pulls off a massive upset. That's what I think is going to happen. Because then we don't just talk about a South African or African star, we talk about a global star. And
I
I think
agree.
that's what it's going to take. And I've always had the dream of producing like an African Pacquiao.
Mm.
And that comes to fruition on the 19th of July.
So that's how high you are on Pumale. You believe that he can become the African Manny Pacquiao?
I think he can be a global superstar, yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's only the guy, let's be real, bro.
Yeah.
There's only
Yeah.
one Manny Pacquiao.
Agree. Okay. Yeah.
He's the next Azuma Nelson or he's the next. Okay, whatever. Let's
Sure.
focus on one guy and one guy who can become great, and I feel that it's him.
All right. I love that. Now, there's another thing I want to ask you about because when I was doing some research, you had an article before that you were interviewed in. You were talking about that there's a lot of boxers that you've dealt with that you've been able to train that could have become world champions, but yet fell short of that. And you being a trainer, you being a person that's been a manager and a promoter, and you've done all the different components now. You've seen those that become thrive and successful, like Pumela Kafu, like Sivanachi, etc. But there's also got to be something that you see in some fighters that prevent them from becoming that next level. When you are identifying fighters, what do you look for? What are those things that you say, okay, this guy can be special. this guy has other things that's maybe going to prohibit him or prevent him from becoming the most potential he could reach?
Well, let me answer your first question to it is that, yeah, you have expectations. A kid comes out of the amateur ranks,
Mm-hmm.
highly touted, great pedigree, been in the national team, gone overseas, won international medals, and you think this is a sure bet to become a great professional. And then what happens is the cracks of life,
Mm.
and that's, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, or, maybe having women issues or, coming from a disadvantaged background.
Sure.
And then that you can't prevent in life because that happens, and that can happen to anyone.
Sure.
And there have been fighters in the past where I thought, man, like this one kid could have crossed the line and become like unified champion,
Mm.
and just never happened due to him getting two women pregnant at the same time. It was just, yeah. So there's always those
Okay.
crazy stories that you hear, the back end stories or the back stories of boxing and boxers.
Okay.
Um, what makes a good fight, in my opinion? When a fighter comes to you and he's had 5 fights and he's already had 4 trainers, the chances of that fighter being loyal to you are slim and none. I
Okay. Yeah.
look at
True.
I look at the loyalty aspect, I look at the personality aspects, but then fundamentally I look at the nuts and bolts of that fighter's fundamentals in terms of boxing ability. Not every fighter can hold a punch. Not every fighter can punch. Not every fighter's got good boxing skills. There's got to be a whole combination and blend of things together. The most important thing for me, though, is the connection between trainer and fighter. Obviously, boxing is my business. It's my passion. It's my dream. But if a fighter just simply doesn't have the ability to go where I need him or her to be, I'm wasting my time. And equally, I feel that athlete's also wasting their time. So
Okay.
connection's important, dedication's important, commitment's important, and the right mental attitude. Because we've seen
Mm.
so many fighters who've got all the ability in the world, and they just kind of self-destruct. And I think that takes a good coach. And now I'm going to come under criticism for this, but the question is, can you, as a trainer, develop a fighter's heart? And I believe you can.
Okay.
I really, really believe you can. We've seen in the past where, the casual boxing fans says, oh, he's got no heart, he keeps quitting. But I believe that a good trainer can instill heart and courage into that
Okay.
athlete. And again, it's my opinion. I've seen fighters react differently.
Mm-hmm.
Saying the right words to them, getting that spark lit within their belly to go out and really bite hard in the gum shield and fight and win. I've been involved in those situations, and I can tell you right now that you can, as a coach, you can make a difference.
I'm glad you brought that up because I actually want to ask about this. I asked Kafu when he was on the show a few months ago about, I believe it was 7th or 8th round when he was in Japan against the Tanaka fight. There's a viral video of you when you were going out there and you kind of encouraged him saying, listen, this is what you lived up for. Don't let people down. This whole line you went down during that 1 minute in between the rounds. Can you take us through just what goes through your mind when you feel like it's time to let somebody in that situation, Kafu, say, okay, we have to turn up the heat. This is something that I got to light a fire in you. What drove you to say, okay, this is the right time for that? And why were those the words you chose to inspire him? Because it obviously did work. He even talked about that. So just walk us through your mentality and processing of doing that decision.
So I've had a few very cool viral moments, which just comes to me naturally. I'm not doing it for attention.
Okay.
The one was at the end of the 7th round with Pumalela against Tanaka, where I was in a radio interview with him prior going in outside of fight training camp, where he said his dream is to buy his mother a house.
Mm-hmm.
And what I said to him at the end of the 7th round was, all that shit about you wanting to buy your mother a house, you're letting this guy take it away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sparked him. When Sive was in Mexico the first time against Flores, um, at the end of the 9th round, going into the 10th, I said, you got 9 minutes to turn your life around. And that kind of just sank in, and he just fought his ball sack off. And the thing is, you got to be able to make that connection and know what makes your fighter tick at that moment. I'm not doing it for attention, like I said, or the cameras on me. I want to get the best out of my athlete at that time. And sometimes A lot of the times, chips are down in a fight, and what you say can impact someone's mental capability into a physicality perspective.
Mm,
And I've seen that so many times before. And you make someone believe when you believe in them, and you see that belief in them circulate through their body, and they can perform to another level. And that's what I do. It's not like I'm a psychologist or psychiatrist, or I've studied psychology.
sure.
Although I've had plenty of therapy sessions in my life, which I'm not ashamed to admit.
Hmm.
But it's about saying the right word. And I said this last year when I won an award for something. Words are like toothpaste. Once they're out the tube, you can't get them back.
Yeah.
And words must resonate within a fighter, and that
Mhm.
connection is so important, especially when you believe in your fighter that can actually pull it off and win.
How did you learn that though? Because you said something a little bit ago. You said, a lot of trainers might disagree with that. Obviously, a lot of people say the heart is something that a fighter has. You went to the opposite side of that, and it's obvious, like you said, it's true. You have done that to many different fighters, different situations. So, how did you learn that? How did you learn that you kind of decide, you know what? I can actually help these guys out in terms of the words that I use. I can get these guys to perform to the highest level possible and get that out of their heart. How did you learn and discover that?
I think I think life, man. I think I've been through
Mm,
some really hard moments in my life.
okay,
And the thing about me is that I will never quit. Never quit.
I like that.
And also, don't tell me that I can't do something, because I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like, that's like my whole life. Um, I wasn't supposed to be this successful, but I am, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a success. And I will never be apologetic for the successes that I've had in South African boxing. And I feel that at a young age that I'm at, even though I might be middle aged, whatever it is, but I
Sure.
still feel that I've got so much more to offer and so much more to achieve. And I want the best for my fighters. I want to change their lives, and I want them to change their lives.
Mm,
So it's not something that I've learned. It's something that I suppose is ingrained in me from my childhood, from my life, from my experiences.
okay.
And I'm a dreamer, Zach.
Hmm.
I'm a dreamer.
I love
And
that.
if you said to me, really, what do I do for a living? One of my jobs is to make dreams come true. And that's what I'm in the game for.
Well, that leads me exactly into what I wanted to get into about, and that's discussing you. Because I want people to get to know you a little better, who you are, and how you got into this. So I know you talked about in the very beginning. You started your career off as a TV presenter, SABC. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's not what you're doing anymore, but you always, I have to imagine, was a part of boxing. Because even in those segments, I know you were talking a lot about boxing and whatnot earlier in the day. So you got to take us through this. And has boxing just been kind of
Yeah.
ingrained in your bloodline, just something you've loved from pretty much the time you were younger? Or when did that start coming into your life?
Yeah. So you've really done some research. Thank you for that. No, so it's kind of I'm third generation boxing. My late
Okay.
grandfather owned the new Barclay Hotel in town, Johannesburg, and he owned a boxing gym. My late dad was in the sports. He was an amateur boxer, not very good by his own admission. And
Hmm.
I started becoming a quarterman at the age of 12 legally, which is a record in South African boxing, because the old act from 1951, there was no age requirement for a second. Now in the new act from 2001, you have to be 18 years or older. Just recently, my son's 19, and I got him licensed, and he became like kind of fourth generation of Nathan being in the corner for boxing.
Okay.
But it was last year actually. Sometime I found an old picture of myself, and my mom actually gave it to me, and I thought that I got my first pair of gloves when I was 4 years old. And I looked at this picture, and there's a picture of me. It's somewhere on one of my social media posts. I was actually 2 years old when I got my first pair of gloves.
Okay.
And my fascination with boxing started when I was like 2, taken to a boxing gym at the age of 7, taken to a boxing show when I was 7. I started tagging my dad in the corner, getting chased away at the age of 9. And then after years of being chased away, I got licensed. And I've literally fallen in love with the sports. I mean, I fell in love with the sports, I suppose, when I was 2. I was just fascinated with boxing. My
Hmm.
dad would come home very late in the morning from these boxing shows, wearing his like white, Sanya tracksuit and white leather shoes because the game was very different back then. And I
Sure.
would nag and nag and nag, and and literally it was like love at first fights. Like I am totally immersed and in love with my work. I love boxing. I
Okay.
love the characters. I love the fighters. I love the fact that I've been able to change lives. It's also a very heartbreaking sport because I've also seen a lot of heartbreak. I've also seen a lot of dreams that have been shattered because boxing does either make or break those dreams.
Yeah.
There's no escaping the truth from boxing.
Hmm.
Um, and there are no shortcuts either.
Yep.
But and the highs are incredible, Zach, and the lows are just horrendous. Like you want to jump off a building. But it
Mm.
is what it is. I thrive on the highs. I work to win. I love winning. Obviously, like I hate losing. It sucks.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a sport. It's not called winning. It's called sport.
Hmm.
And boxing is very parallel to life. It's taught me a lot of good lessons, a lot of harsh lessons, and a lot of lessons that I never would have learned without boxing.
Mm. When you look at, if I were to say, if I were to go tell your younger self that you're going to become this person that goes and manages world champions, this person that's accomplished what you accomplished, but this is before obviously even getting into the industry, just as you're, let's say I went and met your 15-year-old self. Is this something that you ever could have imagined?
I dreamed of it when I was in high school.
Okay.
Like I dreamed of it. Like I only appreciate my career when I'm doing interviews like this.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, my office is my man cave. I've got my trophies, I've got my pictures, I've got my memorabilia, I've got my
Sure.
belts, my replicas, and so forth. But I don't really sit back and think, geez, Colin, look at what you've done. It's only
Yeah.
when I do interviews like this where I actually kind of reflect and I think, yeah, you've done okay. So I'm very hard on myself, but I'm very ambitious. I'm
Mm.
somewhat impulsive sometimes. Although I've learned now in business, you got to kind of be very cool, calm, collected.
Sure.
But to answer your question, I would have probably hugged you and said, like, please God, from your lips to God's ears, because I would love to be a world class boxing trainer manager. And here I
Mm.
am doing it. And I'm really blessed. Like I have to pinch myself sometimes.
Yeah. So, what was it about you wanting to go into the TV industry? Because obviously, if you said you at a younger age you wanted to be a manager, why did you not go into that immediately? What led to the TV industry then?
I was young. I
Okay.
was doing a lot of partying and stuff, and as like I studied the Sports Science Institute, my sports performance,
Hmm.
and then I just wanted to get into like I've always in my career, like I've always been different.
Mm.
Um, I don't have a lot of friends, and I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I know a lot of people, if that makes sense, and a lot of
Yeah. No,
people
I
know
feel
me,
you.
of
Yeah.
course. I'm very much a loner to a point, although I'm married and I've got kids, and my kids are my centerpiece besides obviously work and everything. But I've always wanted to. I've never followed the norm, and I'm
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay being different, and it's not to say that like I'm a nerd because I don't think I'm a nerd. I mean,
Sure.
I love reading and I love being alone, but I've got my boxing personality, which is obviously I have to sell a product, which is
Hmm.
important with my career, which I absolutely love doing.
Okay.
I love coaching, but also there's a side to me that just kind of enjoys his alone time. So
Sure.
yeah, I don't know, man. I suppose it depends on what day you catch me on.
Fair enough. So when you did make that decision, said, you know what, I'm going to leave the TV industry. I'm going to go into this boxing industry. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what God's got in store for me, but I'm going to go take this journey. What led to that step of faith for yourself?
Yes, it's a crazy story. I didn't really want to be a television presenter for the rest of my career. I
Okay.
wanted to get into boxing. So I started the Hot Box Gym, which is now nearly 25 years old, when I was 22 years old. And I mean, I knew nothing about running a gym or running a business or a personal trainer. Then I
Hmm.
did my sports performance, like I said. And all I wanted to do was do commercial training, get guys in to let off some steam. I didn't really want to interact with fighters. But because I was in television, a lot of the fighters used to see me at the shows. And the next thing they said, well, can you train me? Can you manage me? I had, I suppose, a bit of notoriety because I was on TV here in South Africa. And I thought, let me try it. I mean, I got this boxing background from Cape Town, which not a lot of people actually knew me for, remember me for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started coaching fighters. I had a fighter who was 6-3-1. And when we parted ways, he was 11-3-1. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do well in this industry. And then, because my late dad introduced me to the sports, and I mean, I was always passionate and always loved boxing. And then, when you start winning and you see yourself going places, and a lot of my friends thought I was crazy, I'd be wasting my time, and I never listened to them. And I'm glad I never listened to them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this interview with you.
Well, I love that idea, man. So then you go through this journey now, and you've reached this point where you now have the guys of Kafu, you have the guys of Sivanachi and Shinga, you have all these world champions on yourself. And you said something interesting a little bit ago too. You said that you're still focused. You don't even like to reflect it because you know you're still ambitious. You have a lot more you want to accomplish. So what more do you have in store? Like, what are your goals? And if you were to say, the next 10, 15, 20 years, however much longer you want to be a part of this industry, what is there for you to accomplish? What do you want to get done to be saying when you can look back and say, you know what? I accomplished everything I wanted.
I don't think I'll ever get to that point. That's the
Okay.
first thing. And the second thing is, Zach, I, I don't, I don't, I want to be in boxing as long as I can.
Okay.
Like,
I
I
like it.
love the sport. So, and and yes, my career's evolved over the years. It really has evolved over the years, and you got to reinvent yourself. And I always like talking about Madonna, how she kept coming back at different characters in her music career.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started, all I wanted to do was be a trainer, and I realized that as you get older and life goes on, and you have to evolve in what you're doing. So I want to keep doing this. Like, the reality is that when do you actually retire? And I don't really want to retire.
Mm,
I love the sports. I feel that I've got so much more to offer, so many more world champions to produce, so
mm,
many more lives and dreams to change and fulfill. So no, I mean, I thought one day, like, gosh, it'd be great to be in Canastota one day. And I thought
mm.
to myself early on, like, I don't know if I'm ever good enough to be there. But now that's obviously one of the goals. But is it the be all and end all of my career? Probably not. No.
Okay.
The legacy that I leave for South African boxing and for my kids, because one day I'm going to die, and I
Yeah.
hate talking about it, but the sport carries on. Like,
Yeah.
it's like when was it, 1981, when Muhammad Ali said, "When I retire from boxing, boxing will die." Well, to a point it died, but it carried on. But
Yeah.
Ali's name will always be entrenched in the sport. So
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of leave a legacy for my family
Yeah.
and the lives that I've changed. The biggest blessing, I think, besides producing world champions, is when a fighter retires and they still call you up and you can still have lunch with them and they can still call you a friend.
Mm,
Last week, I had the misfortune of one of my former fighters who's retired, father's passing away. And I
mm.
went to the funeral, and you still have that an affinity to your fighter, even though he's now just your friend. And that to me is very important. It's the lives you touch during and after the careers. And that's very important to me, to maintain those relationships.
I don't know if that's every trainer. I haven't talked to every trainer, every manager out there, but that's unique. I love that about you because, like you said, this is bigger than just boxing to a certain extent. Like, this is something that you want to actually know these guys. You want to see them be successful in life. You said that so many times throughout this interview. When you talk about that personal aspect, has that just naturally been ingrained in you? Have you just always been somebody that says, you know what, I want you to be successful, but more importantly, I want you to accomplish your dreams. I want you to have the best life. I want to truly create a genuine, authentic relationship. Has that always been a part of you?
Probably not. No, I think
Okay.
it's as I've experienced life in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I haven't had it so easy. I've been divorced. I missed out on my 19-year-old son Daniel's growing up. He moved to a different province, and I'm still very incredibly close to him and to my ex-wife, actually. And
Okay.
then I have a special needs son, which is my life and soul. People around me know that. And I have a little girl as well. So I've experienced life, I've experienced heartache, and I know those pains. Also, I've lost a parent. So I've
Hmm.
experienced a lot in my life. And when I say I genuinely care about human beings, I really do, because I've experienced loss, I've experienced tragedy, and I've experienced the pain. And I
Yeah.
just want the best for people around me. And I think when I've stopped to fight, and I've come under criticism for it, and I'll take the criticism. Go out on his shield. It was championship fights. No, when I stopped the fight with the fighter sitting on the stool, it wasn't just about winning at that moment,
Yeah.
because that fighter's going to get married, that fighter's going to have kids, and I owe it to that fighter's family for that fighter to be walking in a straight line, to be coherent when he or she speaks. And
Mm.
it's not just about that moment; it's about winning. It's an holistic approach on what's that fighter going to be like in 20 years' time if I don't make a stand. And because fighters will fight, that's their job. But it's the people around them that need to care, nurture them. And that's what you learn. And that comes at the experience of life, Zach.
That has to be a tough thing because I don't think any trainer wants to go and throw in the towel and say this is gonna be the end of the fight. Obviously both the fighter's not gonna like it at the moment, you're not gonna like that at the moment. But how do you do this? I'm always curious about hearing the mental component of that, to like know inside the back of your mind saying, okay, I know this is the right thing to do. This is time. What goes through your mind? What kind of triggers and says, okay, now's the time, and I know this is in the best interest long term.
So there are three facets to protecting a fighter. It's the referee, the doctor, and the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've got more experience over the years, I realized the seriousness and the responsibility of head coach in the corner is just crucial for literally life and death. I mean, I've done a broadcast where I was doing commentary, and 3 years ago, Smuzi Vitellesi in Durban passed away in the last round.
Mm-hmm.
He had a seizure, and unfortunately, he never recovered, and he passed away tragically. And that lived with me.
Mm.
And then I look at it from a logical perspective. You
Okay.
take the emotions out of it, and then you look at that, a fighter getting rocked on a shot. There's a follow up, and you think to yourself, at that moment, can the fighter regroup and get him or herself out of that position? And if not, you have to stop the fight. If the referee's not going to do it, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
The other aspect is the compassionate side. We've seen fighters taking a pacing that can turn around with one shot.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely that happens. We've seen it. It's boxing. That's the nature of the sport.
Yeah.
But we've often seen fighters being in a fight for too long, and it's like the trainers have no compassion. The referee has no compassion, or the referee sees that the fighter's still in it and the fighter's still fighting back. And as I said to you previously, the fighter's job is to fight. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the compassion side of it is, and the empathy side, and it goes back to, you know, at what cost is winning compared to a human life? And I
Yeah.
think that's what make goes through my mind is, can the fighter turn it around? If he or she can't, rather stop the fight and save him or her for another day.
Yeah. Going back into your career, Colin, there was an interesting storyline, and that was a couple years ago. You were in Russia for a fight. You end up getting COVID. I gotta hear the story because this was when I was doing my research. I came across. I'm like, I've not heard too many stories about that. I know there's a lot. Everyone's got COVID stories, but you came pretty close to death overall, according to the article at least. Can you take us through what all happened there and just what that experience was like?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the stories that I suppose might be in a book if I ever decide to write a book in my life.
Yeah.
Crazy story. So there was the economic summits, could have been the G20 for Russia,
Hmm.
Putin before all the stuff hit the fan.
Yeah.
Uh, 2021 went out for the main event. got jumped on the plane. COVID tests were good. Right next to my athletes, no mask.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we had to do a COVID test for the ceremonial weigh-in. He tested negative. I tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nah, man, something, I'm in Russia, man. What's going on here, And then, like automatically you think, are they trying to sabotage the fights? Or they're trying to,
Mm-hmm.
And at that stage, actually, I was feeling pretty shitty. I
Okay.
wasn't feeling great. I was feeling ill. And then I went for another test, and it was kind of like a home kit, and I tested negative.
Mm-hmm.
But the policy at the time was, because my first test got inserted to the Russian National Health Department, by law, I had to go in and be observed overnight for 24 hours, whatever it was.
Mm.
So the next thing, there was like pandemonium in my hotel, and all these guys in hazmat suits came to fetch me. I felt like I was being arrested. It was just crazy.
Wow.
Got taken into this room. I was like, there was no Wi-Fi at the time. No one could speak English. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Yeah, I mean, it's a long story how I cracked the Wi-Fi code and how I got on, but I ended up I had the Delta variant of COVID,
Mm.
and I was sick, had pneumonia. I mean, I thought of literally dying. It was just crazy. I don't think I was going to die, but when you're this
Sure.
vulnerable and this sick, and I was in a Russian hospital for 4 weeks, man. It was crazy, crazy,
Wow.
crazy, crazy. And the hardest part for me was my little girl. Every time a video call, she was like, "Daddy, when you coming home?"
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, I cried 3 times. I cried when they told me that I had pneumonia. I thought, man, this is the end of it. I could barely breathe.
Yeah.
I started crying 3 weeks in when I thought I was about to leave, and I got a sinus infection. I was like, man, I gotta go
Wow.
home. And then the last time I cried was when I saw my kids, and that was just
Mm.
very emotional. So I went to Russia. I was supposed to go for a week. I ended up being 5.5 weeks. So crazy story.
Is that the craziest experience you've had in this boxing world so far?
Now that I think about it, yeah, I mean, I have to agree with that. Yeah, to
Yeah.
me, I don't think there's an argument, Zach. I mean, it's a fucking crazy story, bro. It's like
Yeah.
really crazy. And funny enough, like it's become like people still say to me like, "Are you in Russia? Did you get COVID?" And I was like, "Yeah, I thought I was gonna die." It was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, I remember guys doing interviews with me
Hmm.
back in South Africa. They're like, "Colin, is it true that you got COVID and you're in a Russian hospital?" I mean, that was the story. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, I got a few more things before I let you go, Colin. One of which is there something else that has been unique about you? And when you talk about obviously South African boxing, we got into that earlier, and how obviously you've been a huge proponent of being able to expand it and make it a lot more global. All your connections are incredible, and you have a
Thank
great
you.
connection with IBF President Daryl Peoples. You obviously have known Eddie Hearn, which obviously helped led to this whole deal coming together with Kafu. You talk about obviously Freddie Roach. I know you spent a lot of time learning from him. When you talk about these different aspects, that's something that not all people are going to be willing to do and take that next step, especially, you're coming from where you were before, all of this component. What's led you to this stance where you say, you know what, I'm willing to learn from people like Freddie Roach and say, and basically admit to yourself, I don't know everything. How do I become better? And then just make these connections, go kind of outside your bubble and say, you know what, I don't just want to be someone that's South African bound. I want to make this a global thing. How were you inspired and what led you to become the person that you are in that aspect?
It's a complex question. I think I've always wanted to be the best in whatever I do. So,
Love it.
and I was actually discussing this with the carer who looks after my son, my special needs son, this morning, actually in the car on the
Mm-hmm.
way to his school, where I've always wanted to never be mediocre in anything and everything I do. I want to be the best in what I can be.
Mm.
And the other thing is being humble. And when I was younger and ignorant and naive, I had a big chip in my shoulder. And I think it is age appropriate. And I also think that In boxing, you only get credibility based on your success and what you've achieved and what you've won, and
Yeah.
pay my school fees. And I think the more success that I have, the more humbling I feel towards myself as a human being. I think I'm a little bit more kind, even though I'm very competitive within myself.
Sure.
But I know that God has blessed me with a very special and incredible life in the sport of boxing. And there's nothing, but nothing that can humble you more than life in boxing. And if anyone knows that, it's me.
Hmm.
And I think the more success that I have and the more success that I achieve through my athletes, even through my own company and my self worth, is just always remaining to be humble and always have time for people. Even though, like, at times I'm really not a people's person. Like I said, I enjoy my own downtime.
Sure.
But knowing that I've worked incredibly hard to get where I've got, but also it can all be taken away in a breath. And I'm very grateful for for myself, believing in myself, because I'll always back myself,
Hmm.
and just believing that I can achieve and I can do it. But equally, just for the higher power above, for putting me on this path and giving me this direction, and also for developing me, my personality, I suppose, and just the fact that I don't know everything and I never will.
I love that answer. There's another fighter we've kind of discussed briefly throughout this interview. That's Simnanachi Nanshinga. He should be coming out on the show actually in a couple of days now, so I'm excited to talk to him too. But I want to hear your thoughts on him. Obviously, he hasn't fought for a little while now. What's your guys got kind of plan for him? Can we see him return to the ring anytime soon? Is there anything in negotiation for him, or what does that look like?
Yes, we're looking at bringing him out again before June. He's still young, still very ambitious, very
Yeah.
good looking, charismatic, and really punch.
Hmm.
Um, Based on his loss against Yabuki, considering what Yabuki did to Yala, it's
Yeah.
not such a devastating loss. I mean, obviously we lost the championship,
Agree.
but the plan is to get him back into the winning column, work the rating system again, and get him in contention. I still believe that he can be a three-time world champion. I still think he is destined for greater things.
Okay.
And he's just also an incredible kid that I've been working with and around since 2018.
Mm. Are there any targets? Obviously, you said the first one just kind of get a win underneath his resume. But when you talk about possibly getting another fight in for, if there's somebody you guys are looking at as a guy to go get a world championship against, is there somebody you guys kind of targeting?
No, right now it's just obviously, he's had a good break. He's back in the gym training.
Okay.
Good timing. The foundation's still really good. Now it's just about getting him back into the winning column.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I want to get into you about is Turkey Al Sheikh. He's obviously put together massive things. And obviously, I want to just pick your mind on that aspect because there's a lot of debate. People go back and forth in terms of fans specifically. But when you talk about what he's doing for boxing, how high are you on him? Do you like what he's building? Do you not like what he's doing? What's your thoughts over on Turkey Al Sheikh and what he's brought to boxing?
Well, I think it's great because he's got people talking about the sport. He's got people interested in the sport. He's putting on fights that could never be made before.
Agree.
Yes, he's got a great budget to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but invariably we've seen fights that we probably never would have seen before.
Agree.
We've also seen Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren become friends, which is probably 5 years ago unheard of.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that kills boxing is the egos, the politics. And I think if we can put that aside and actually make the sports what it can and should be, I think
Mhm.
he's doing the right thing and I think he's on the right track.
Absolutely. Well, Colin, I have one final question for you that I like wrapping up every single interview with, and that's talking about your legacy. You've hinted at that a couple of different times, but when that day does come, you step away from boxing. What is it that you want people to remember Colin Nathan for?
Sure. A person who really cared about the fighters and about the sport.
Mm.
I
Oh,
think that would be it. A person who truly wanted the best for boxing and his fighters.
I love that, Colin. Well, Colin, I am so grateful to have you on today. It was great getting to have you on here, and I'm excited to see what God's got in store for you.
Thank you, man. And please, God, we do it again soon. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm very blessed and grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're always welcome on, Colin. Best of luck July 19th. I'm excited to see what you guys got in store right there.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Talk to you later, Colin. God bless.
Bye.
I appreciate each and every single one of you guys for tuning into that interview. I'll get that clipped up, edited, and posted on my YouTube channel very, very shortly. I hope you guys have a great time. I'll see you guys after a few minutes. I'm going to go on a quick commercial break, and I'll see you guys shortly. God bless. Testing, testing. This is a quick test just to make sure everything is good. Test, test, test. Check, check, check. Test, test. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the SchuZ Show. My apologies for the delayed break. There was not intended, but I had some technical difficulties, and I realized that was also going on during the Colin interview on my end. So everything he responded to should be coming in clearly. He has also heard my words. It just was a little bit delayed and whatnot. So I'm going to try to get that figured out and fixed so you guys can go check out the full interview in a more appropriate way. However, hopefully I got the issue fixed now, because I know that was also somewhat of an issue yesterday as well. So we're going to figure that out. Hopefully, we'll get that all figured out now. Not sure exactly. But with that being said, though, there's not a lot of news to get in today, boxing regards. But I have one segment planned for you guys before I wrap the show up today. And that's a segment that we're going to discuss what is next for the big name fighters that fought this past weekend. Let's hop right into it. Where do the big fighters go from here? Teofimo Lopez that fought this past weekend. Let's start off with him. My idea for Teofimo Lopez. He was one of the few guys that actually showed up. Now, was it the most entertaining thing in the world? Probably not, but he still showed up. He took care of business and he handled his job. My idea for him, stay at 140 and unify the belts. You can make a fight with Gary Antoine Russell, Richardson Hitchens, or Cambosis winner. Albert Puello. Now, I know he's fighting, already scheduled out something booked there, but the point is, unify these belts. Teofimo Lopez is the best fighter in the weight class, and I believe that he would actually be somebody that could go and become undisputed at 140 if he so chooses. So if I were him, that's the move I would make for Teofimo Lopez. At the same time, I do recognize that moving up to 147 is on the table for him. If you get the boots at his fight, go ahead and try taking that. I would favor boots in that fight, but Teofimo Lopez, if that's what he wants, can go ahead. My biggest thing for Teofimo Lopez, stick at 140, become undisputed. The only other fight that I could see make sense would be going and fighting Devin Haney. Both guys did win on Friday. Both guys could have a signature win there against two guys that are probably top 15 if you were to say pound for pound. That's a fight that I would like to see have happen. Let's head over to Devin Haney now. If you're Devin Haney, here's who I would project him to go after. Everybody at 147 seems to be wanting Mario Barrios. Even Manny Pacquiao wants him. He's coming out of retirement to try fighting Mario Barrios, and so I think he's the weak link there. When you talk about everybody at 147, whether they be champions or they are top contenders, I feel like Barrios is probably outside that top 8. I would say he's probably just about maybe in the top 10 area. So everybody seems to be gunning for him. If you're Devin Haney, you get the Mario Barrios fight, go get him. I could also see him, but most importantly, I'd say this. I think Devin Haney needs a tune-up fight. That's my personal opinion. I think he needs to go get another fight under his belt, shake off whatever is going on, just get some more rounds under his belt, and get going from there. That's why I do say Barrios would fit that qualification, because I do not think Barrios is that top guy. Yes, he's a world champion. I do not want to disrespect world champions. However, I do think he's the weakest link of that top group in 147. So he could go for him. At the same time, winner of Crocker versus Donovan coming up soon, that rematch. Conor Benn, once again, is that necessarily a tune-up fight? No. But that's a lot of money that would be hard to pass up. Although I do think Conor Benn's going to be making the rematch with Chris Eubank Jr., especially now that Ryan Garcia fight's off the table. The Chris Eubank-Conor Benn fight seems to be the one locked in. You could also go for Teofimo Lopez, who I just suggested a moment ago. Gary Antoine Russell, if you stay at 140, go and unify or go after him, go get Gary Antoine Russell. That would be all good fights to make. As for Ryan Garcia, the biggest fight for me, for him to make, is to go do a tune-up fight. He needs it even more so than Devin Haney did. That was a horrible showing against Rolly Romero. No disrespect to Rolly Romero. He had a great performance. I've already given him his praise. The fact of the matter is that Rolly Romero is a good fighter, but the level and potential that Ryan Garcia has of reaching is significantly larger and higher than Rolly Romero. There should be no reason that Ryan Garcia does not defeat him. Therefore, Ryan Garcia needs to go do a tune-up fight. And then following that tune-up fight, he should go fight Rolly Romero rematch or the Devin Haney rematch. I prefer Rolly Romero, but either one would work for me. Let's go to Rolly Romero. Where does he go from here? Well, one, you could have the winner of Crocker versus Donovan. That would be a fight that obviously would be huge. Whoever wins that fight would probably be top 5 in their, in the organization body. So I see that fight being potentially there. The rematch with Ryan Garcia could be on the table. Also, I could throw out one more. Imantas Stanionis. I still like Stanionis. I think Boots Ennis is just that guy at 147. I think Stanionis is still one of the top 5 guys at 147. I think he would destroy Mario Barrios, and I think he'd give Brian Norman Jr. the run for his money. I would like to see that fight. It would be interesting. If Rolly gets that fight, then he's obviously be set for a world championship shot. I just see Rolly Romero, Stanionis doesn't make sense to me. As for Canelo Alvarez, what is next for him? Bud Crawford. Obviously, it's already booked. Canelo, listen, this is the ultimate thing for Canelo Alvarez. We have to understand this. Canelo is in the final fights of his career. There's going to be 3 more guaranteed. The Bud Crawford fight in September, 2 more next year on obviously Cinco de Mayo weekend, Mexican Independence weekend, September. Those are already locked in. Anything past that for Canelo Alvarez is not yet for sure. It's very uncertain if Canelo Alvarez will be fighting past the Riyadh season deal. And therefore, I wanted to say this. Canelo Alvarez, he's only got a handful of fights left. That will be against Bud next. Obviously, that's going to happen. And after that, could it be Chris Eubank Jr.? Sure. Could it be the mega fight of David Benavidez that we all want? Sure. There's many things on the table. But my thing is for him, the end is ultimately near. He's going to be going, obviously, closer to retirement every single fight he fights. Not much to go. I don't think when we look at Canelo, we need to be looking at how does he get to become pound number 1. He's undisputed again. Does he maybe go up to Dimitri Bivol? Sure, that could be something to test himself. I don't know what the answer is. What I do know is that the end is coming closer and closer for Canelo Alvarez, and I don't think his mindset should be on being this, pound number 1 type of guy anymore. I think those days are gone. I think he's now in a position where he's shifting his focus. He's going to make some money, big fights still, and good fights. Let's be honest, Bud Crawford and Chris Eubank Jr., whatever those fights are, would be bigger and more entertaining than what we've witnessed against William Skull and others. So I'm not against that idea. He just needs to ride out however he wants. He's earned that. As for Naoya Inoue, he already has MJ booked for September. Now that could hypothetically be pushed back, they said. He took some more damage than people were expecting against Ramon Cardenas. So maybe it could be an October fight. We'll see what happens there. However, yes, Inoue will be fighting MJ. And then in my opinion, it could either be MJ and then a filler fight and then Junto Nakatani, or just MJ straight into Junto Nakatani. And then at that point in time, considering moving up to 126. I don't see, even the way he hinted at that he's going to stay at 122 until he can no longer weigh in there. I don't necessarily fully buy in that. I feel like he could always make 122 for the foreseeable future. What I think he's mostly referring to is he's going to take his sweet time. In a way, he's going to allow things to kind of develop. MJ is the fight that needs to get taken care of. And then Junto Nakatani will move up and you have this mega fight. Because once Inoue does move to 126, cutting back to 122 is just very, very unlikely. So I think 126 is still on his radar. He still wants to do it. I think he's just going to wait and hold off up until the Nakatani fight happens. At that point in time, if all goes according to plan, Inoue will likely move up to 126 at that point in time. Let's go to 2 more guys. Rafael Espinoza. This is a man that was impressive on Sunday. Before the Inoue masterclass and the Inoue Cardenas incredible fight happened, this was a fight that really turned the table for the weekend. He put on a show. He had an incredible performance against Vasquez, and he now sets himself up for a big fight. I'm excited to see him back in the ring again. Here's the table. Inoue is obviously on the table. He could do that fight, like I just said. I don't think Inoue is fighting for, probably another, maybe even year until he gets to 126. So that might not be on the table. But Inoue Espinoza would be an intriguing fight to make happen. You also have Bruce Carrington, SchuZ Show. That's the most likely fight I see for Espinoza next. I would like to see that fight. I think Bruce Carrington's earned a shot at world title now, and I would not be shocked to see that. Both guys were top rank. I see that fight coming to fruition. You could also have a unification with Nick Ball. I say that because it would be very interesting between having one of the smallest champions ever at featherweight history fighting the tallest champion in featherweight history. Almost a foot separates the two of them. That's the fight that I'd love to see have happen there. Finally, Martin Bakole. Billy Nelson came on and did an interview with The Ring just a little bit ago, and actually Bill Nelson will be coming on this show in 2 weeks now. We just got that book this morning. Just a little bit of insight there. But Billy Nelson talked about the fact that they're going to bring in a nutritionist and strength and conditioning coach. Thank goodness. Martin Bakole has the potential, the God-given ability to go and be a force at the heavyweight division. There is no reason that Martin Bakole is not in that top 5 type tier heavyweights. The only thing holding Martin Bakole back is himself. It's him getting in shape. Now, we could go down this discussion. What was Jared Anderson? How good is he? Is he not very good? Is that why Martin Bakole looked good? I don't know, but what I do know is that Martin Bakole looked his best when he weighed 15 plus pounds less than he fought at the past 2 fights. When Martin Bakole is even touching 300 pounds, it is not a pretty sight. The answer in the situations will quite simply be move around him and get away. And that was against Efe Ajagba. Efe Ajagba is a good fighter. He's not in that top tier of guys, though. If you are going to be Martin Bakole and you're trying to go fight a guy, let's say Usyk, it would be an ugly day. Dubois would give him a little bit more chance because Dubois is going to go do a firefight with him as well. But still, those top guys, my apologies, Tyson Furies, those type of guys that are going to be able to move around, Caballero, you talk about those top guys, Joseph Parker, any one of those guys that can move around would give him nightmares. Mario McCoy must get in shape. It has to happen immediately. That's the answer they have to do right now. Mario McCoy needs to stop messing around. He needs to get himself in shape. If he does not cut weight, he's not going to go anywhere. But regardless of that standpoint, the next move for Mario McCoy is a rematch against Efe Ajagba and make a statement in that fight. Get his weight to 280, 285, somewhere in that range. Be in shape, take care of business, do damage to Efe Ajagba, and then reboost your career again. That is the route that Mario McCoy needs to take. No other fight should be on his mind other than getting revenge against Efe Ajagba and doing what he needs to do. He didn't win that fight, in my opinion, nor should it have been a draw. He needs to go out there, make his mark in a statement that we all know he's capable of doing. If he wants to reach his full potential, he needs to cut his weight, and he'll be A-okay. With that being said, though, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' Tuesday. As I said, I might apologize for the technical difficulties again. I will look to get that fixed so that it does not happen in the future. But with that being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. May you guys have a blessed rest of you guys Wednesday. May God bless you guys all. I'll see you guys tomorrow. SchuZ is out. See you guys tomorrow.